M&A TV is very pleased to be joined by Bob Morse, co-founder and CEO of Strattam Capital. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Why don't we start by having you tell us a little bit about your company and what you do specifically?
Sure. Strattam Capital is a new, modern private equity firm focused on the business IT segment. In particular, what we think of as the underappreciated companies in the lower middle market. We try to be the partner of choice to great management teams who have a choice and work with those companies for people who need a little bit more than capital. We're investing across software, digital infrastructure, and tech-enabled services, which is a 10,000 company landscape in the United States, and a place where we see a lot of structural change in the economy.
What are the trends that you're seeing in technology?
One of the big macro trends is this shift towards the cloud, which is a phrase we hear all about, but the realities of it are that people's mindset about the way they're supposed to run their IT are changing. Away from the old approach of, I'm going to buy the hardware and software and hire the people and run it myself, and towards a recognition that it's too expensive, it's too inflexible, selectively I should be outsourcing this. Now, 85% of corporate compute is still on machines that corporate America owns themselves, so for all the advertising, we're still very early in that cycle. And as people begin to outsource that, the universe of people they outsource that to, well, they need capital. They're building the data centers or writing the software or providing the services, and that's our target group of companies that we're financing.
What happens beyond the cloud? Is there a thought what happens after the cloud? Is there another cloud out there?
It's a good question, and I think it gets to this concept of where are we going over the next 10 years? And I think what we see are people's behavior patterns are changing. This idea of what's safe and acceptable is changing. You know, the iPhone didn't exist 10 years ago, and now it's a staple. We see that in the more boring elements of how corporations run their in-house IT, where it used to be, I'm going to do my own disaster recovery, and then you realize, well, maybe we're not the best in the world to do that. Maybe it's safer, to use someone else. And so I think that this idea of outsourced service providers and thinking more granularly about how you're going to run IT is the direction we're going. And I think the exciting thing is those norms will continue to evolve over the next 5 or 10 years.
Well, that's the thing, is that technology just evolves so quickly. How do you stay on top of it? How do you keep up with it and ahead of it?
We are not trying to bet on this new algorithm or that new gizmo. This is really the technology people use to do the day-to-day things to run their companies. And so we're looking for businesses with established products, happy customers that are really about the internal sort of day-to-day running of their business. So while we call it technology, it's across every industry, and people are simply using this as leverage to do what they do better. So we think of them really as, normal companies in a sense. They have profits, they have customers, they deliver a service.
What do you see as your greatest challenges today in this environment?
Well, there is a lot of hype around particularly the early stage and high growth businesses. And that's caused some very, very eye-catching valuations for different companies. And we see a very bifurcated market in terms of how do I think about what my company as a technology company is worth? And am I a unicorn, and am I going to get $1 billion valuation, or am I, part of the last wave that's moving apart? And so to try and sift through the noise and understand really the quality and value of those businesses is one of the things that we spend a lot of time on.
As a not young company, but relatively speaking, where do you see yourself when you think ahead? How far ahead do you think? 5 years, 10 years? When you start thinking, this is where I'd like to be, or this is what we're going to have to do to evolve?
Well, I've been in the private equity industry for 20 years now, and if I've observed one thing, it's that the best returns aren't where they used to be. And you see the great investors continue to innovate on the model and change and adapt with waves and opportunities. And that's what we're trying to do at Strattam Capital, which is to bring an innovative and focused approach to our engagement with this kind of underappreciated business IT market.
And is that what you see as your greatest strength at Strattam?
Yes, and if I were to talk about how we're doing that, we're trying to design the firm to be a partner of choice to great managers. In our market, the great management teams are more scarce than the promising but undermanaged companies. And so designing ourselves with a team of doers and an ecosystem that can help a company that needs a little bit more than capital will cause that manager or that founder who has a choice to want to work with us. That's when we know our model is working.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Bob.
Thank you,
appreciate
Claudia.
your time today.